While the Middle East teeters on the edge of war, Dubai stands as an oasis of calm, untouched by the waves of refugees flooding the region. Unlike its neighbours, or Europe for that matter, this luxury megacity has no refugee crisis, no migration chaos. But why? What has allowed Dubai to maintain its peace and integrity while chaos reigns around it? Welcome to Living History. Dubai's ability to maintain peace and tranquility despite the ongoing unrest in the Middle East isn't a coincidence. It's the result of careful planning, strict policies, and the implementation of a unique governance model that has made it one of the richest cities in the world. But it wasn't always like this. Back in the 18th century, Dubai was essentially a small village on the shores of a creek. Most of its revenue at the time was generated from fishing and pearl diving, and about a quarter of its 20,000 population were migrants. Now, as a small city in a hostile neighborhood, Dubai was prone to external threats. To fend off these threats, the city built an extensive network of walls, ensuring political stability and the safety of its inhabitants. However, this barricade also hindered potential collaboration with neighboring states. So in 1820, Dubai and other UAE states signed a landmark maritime truce, brokered by Great Britain. This opened up the city for more business activities. Investors trooped in from across the region, and within a short while, Dubai established itself as a commerce hub, mostly for fishermen, gold traders, and pearl divers. However, following the collapse of the pearl industry, the Great Economic Depression in the 1930s, and an armed conflict against its next-door neighbor, Abu Dhabi, things took a different turn. The city basically ran out of money, forcing Sheikh Rashid bin Zayed Al Maktoum to look for other wealth-generating concepts. In 1959, the legendary monarch approved the construction of Dubai's first airport, ultimately making it easier for more foreigners to access and do business within the state. As luck would have it, oil was discovered in an offshore field in Fateh at about the same time. But there was a problem. You see, this oil reserve, in the words of Sheikh Rashid, was not much, meaning that once the crude dried up, the state could suffer another economic decline. Sheikh Rashid was obviously keen to avoid this, so he started an aggressive construction and development campaign. Along with building the city's first airport, he immediately approved construction of the Jebel Ali Free Trade Zone and the Jebel Ali Seaport. These projects would eventually become the foundation upon which Dubai's enormous sovereign wealth was built. But perhaps more importantly, they are a testament to Sheikh Rashid's determination to make the city an ideal destination for immigrants across the world. Today, Dubai is home to over 200 nationalities, and 90% of its workforce is made up of immigrants. But somehow it has no known history of illegal or irregular immigration, or dealing with the consequences of a refugee crisis. This ultimately leads us to the big elephant in the room. How has Dubai managed to shield itself from the immigration and refugee crisis that has ravaged the Middle East, Europe, and the entire globe? To answer this question, we need to look at Dubai's strict immigration policies. Despite relying heavily on migrant workers to run its economy, Dubai does not readily offer citizenship to immigrants. Instead, it offers renewable residency permits based on the migrant's investment or employment status. These permits typically last between 5 and 10 years and are thoroughly reviewed before each renewal. So in other words, the only way to become a citizen in Dubai is either by marriage, exceptional merit, or naturalization, which takes 30 years. In comparison, most EU countries, including France, Germany, and the UK, have an average naturalization period of 5 years. And in the United States, for instance, foreigners can sometimes become naturalized within months. This highlights the stark difference between Dubai and Western countries in terms of immigration policies and laws. But it doesn't end there. The UAE as a whole views irregular migration and refugee resettlement as a major threat to its stability. And as such, it has taken proactive measures to tackle them head-on. It is said in some quarters that many Gulf states, including the UAE, have unwritten restrictions in place that make it hard for Syrians to be granted visas. This is not confirmed, of course, but if it's true, the same restrictions might apply to prospective immigrants from other war-torn countries. This line of thought is further supported by the fact that the UAE is not party to the 1951 UN Human Rights Convention, which stipulates that refugees should not be returned to a country where they face serious threats to their life or freedom. Hence, the states within it are not legally obliged to accept or take care of irregular migrants and asylum seekers. For context, the UAE welcomed only 8,900 refugees between 1990 and 2015, a big contrast to Europe, where over 1 million people requested asylum in 2015 alone, and in the US, where 3.2 million refugees have been admitted since 1980. Because they're signatories to the 1951 Convention, these Western countries are often forced to accommodate immigrants and refugees, and they end up taking care of them with taxpayers' money, leaving the coffers of the country depleted. It's a flawed arrangement that has become unsustainable. In the United States, for instance, New York and several other cities are struggling to keep up with the cost of migrant arrivals. Similarly, Germany is battling a never-ending migration crisis. So much so that the once welcoming country has now made a complete U-turn on its open border policy. The United Kingdom is not left out either. Back in April 2023, 52% of respondents in a public opinion poll said they wanted immigration numbers to be reduced. The government unfortunately turned deaf ears to this poll, and by August 2024, the issue had degenerated into a full-blown riot, leading to the country's worst disorder in years. Scenarios like these make you appreciate Dubai's strict immigration policies, even more so when you look at the history of refugee migration in the Middle East. Over time, we've seen cases of terrorist groups embedding themselves among immigrants and refugees, using them as human shields during wartime. Sometimes they even take things to the extreme by establishing their own de facto state within a state. We saw this happen in the late 1960s when the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO, was set up on Jordanian soil. As you can imagine, the result was disastrous, leading to an all-out war with the Syrian military that lasted for 10 months. In the end, the Jordanian military secured victory, and the PLO was evicted from the country, but only after Palestinian terrorists murdered the Jordanian Prime Minister, Wafsi al-Tel, in November 1971. And so, we must ask ourselves, while Dubai's approach to immigration may seem strict, could it actually be a blueprint for stability in an increasingly volatile world? History has shown us, from the PLO's rise in Jordan to terror groups embedding among refugees, how unchecked migration can lead to devastating consequences. So while Dubai's policies may seem extreme, it is clear they've safeguarded the city from the chaos unfolding elsewhere in the region. The question now is, should more countries follow suit? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And to find out more about the chaos happening in Europe, check out my next video, linked here.